Just got back from the local ProQuest. Wanted to give an update on the list that I played this week. So to quickly go over the tournament recap, we had a very good Swiss run. We went X-1 in Swiss, came out of 4th seed. Our one loss was to Aurora. I ended up coming one off of Lethal. So at the very end of the game, I had access to Striders and Pulsing. She was at 5, and it just wasn't enough to win the game. Tight loss, and everything else went very well for us. Craziest game today was definitely the last round. Played against Slip the Cracks, Slippy. Natty drew into a quadruple rampant turn. So I was getting the clock put on me really quickly. At that point in the game, even though I was down like 12 life and I was getting close to single digit life totals, I knew I had all my rampants and I had one set in Arsenal for a couple turns and my hero power was online. So I know as long as I draw like another rampant relatively soon, I get to have my pivot turn back in the game. And something I'm kind of realizing with Verdance that's really powerful about her is that her pivot turn is one of the few pivot turns in Fab where your life total actually changes. So a lot of other pivot turns involve you dropping really low, taking damage to send like your huge combo turn, but your life total usually doesn't change. So if your opponent blocks out, because they're usually higher than you in this situation, you have to maintain the pressure, and if you slip up at any other turn, your life total hasn't changed, and then they can just send a couple things at you and put you right back in the exact same spot. Verdance is really weird because when she does her like rampant, sigil rampant on the trigger, do a bunch of stuff, not only do you deal like 20 arcane around, it's always like somewhere between like 15 and like 25 usually, but you also gain a ton of health. Sometimes you gain like 10 life sometimes. And it's such an interesting pivot because your life total also gets buffered in the process. So even though I'm down like 12, it's like I'm not worried about it because the overall value cycle of that whole thing is like insane. Like I'm gonna deal like 15, gain 10. Like it just clears everything that's happened previously. Stars align and I draw 2 rampants, a blue, and a sigil. So it's literally perfect. We go sigil. Rampant, let the first one resolve, hit grave, we pitch our blue, we plume it back, so we get 4 rampants. It was insane. So I think we did like 30 arcane in total that turn between the Verdance pings as well as like the final amped one. If I remember the math correctly, the final amped one was for 28. And the game was over within the turn cycle. I drew pulsing and then immediately just like killed him on my turn. Or on their turn. So that was our Swiss, kind of insane. In top 8, we get paired into CYB new, so it's already over, but we played for fun. The matchup is that bad. I was really trying to think of something there. I don't have anything. That matchup is terrible. Every access, they can find a way to beat you. They can beat you on the fatigue. They can beat you in disruption. Sometimes value. The best way I found to play that matchup is you just play like a normal mid-range game plan. You're just sending 7s, sending 8s. You're just sending big attacks, forcing them to take damage for them to keep their disruptive lines. And then you can play some H-bots if you can, if you're not getting them ripped. And then you just play like whatever combo you're able to find yourself in, unless if you're pitch stacking something very specific, which is very difficult because she can counter pitch stack you. So I've just found that like the last game against Slip Through the Cracks, you just have to oops into a combo. It's not like when I say oops, I don't mean that like you are just praying to variance to have a playable hand, but just that when you draw it and they're not presenting disruption, like maybe you're down an H-pot, or maybe it could be better, but it's probably not gonna be. And if you like play to get the perfect hand, it may never happen in that matchup. So I've just kind of learned to be content with like, I'm gonna have my H-pot combos be purely buffing with rampants. Like it's only gonna be on Verdance pings, but that's fine, right? Because if we're trading damage and she gets domed for 20, then it's perfectly fine, especially if we're on the Felons and we're playing So tomorrow and we're playing Remembrance. Like she gets so low, she has to get into like a really bad blocking pattern for the rest of the game, especially the Evergreen. So it's not the biggest concern to me, but it's just something that you should know is that like, you don't have to play for the perfect H-pot line because it's just probably not going to happen in that matchup. We get pretty close. We're like 4 or 5 off of lethal. Everything goes wrong basically in that matchup for us. Like we lose both our evergreens, so we have like no actual like fatigue plan. I get hit by like my own blue fruits and autumn's touches like 7 or 8 times. It was absolutely disgusting. So it went how you thought it would. So, you know, it's not the greatest time to be playing Verdance. I think Aurora is unfavored. I think you can make your deck pretty good into her, maybe even, but she's so good. She is the best second format for a reason. She doesn't really have a whole lot of bad matchups. And New is just an absolute menace for a lot of heroes. Like, she gatekeeps a ton of stuff. It is what it is, and I think it's a terrible matchup for you. So, you know, if you're like me in my region and everyone's playing Aurora and New, you really have to ask yourself if you really like this hero or if you maybe should play something else. For me, I just really like this hero. And I talked about how I ended up kind of close to the same build because of the existence of Prism, especially doing very well. So I made some adjustments to the list, but I don't think I cut as many poppers as I think I probably could have because of Prism still existing. But I wanted to run through what I played this week. Mainly, this is everything you've seen before. We're not reinventing the wheel here. The only thing was finding space to include an extra copy of a blue Emeritus. Only running the one. I would like to maybe get this up to 2. The problem with Emeritus, specifically the blue one, is that it is really a non-functional blue, at least in the sense that you never really want to convert it, you never really want to play it, and the only time it's good is when it is your out to lethal if you don't have Pulsing in Arsenal, or if you have used Plume already in the matchup and you don't have access to go Plume for Pulsing. Increasing the number of outs that you have to just drop someone to 4 and then just naturally draw into something that presents lethal, I think is important, to be honest. And so I wanted to include it. That was really the only thing. So main board is up to 59 cards now. It does mess with some of the sideboarding, but it's just what I wanted to do. If I could go even further, I would maybe just like to get this up to a 60 card main board and maybe just side in a second copy of Blue Emeritus. Like, we're on 24 blues, 25 might be the move. I think that this deck relatively is fine with only 1 blue per turn, but I think upping the count a little bit is kind of helpful for some of the more combo focused turns, especially turns where you are using Plume. You normally need a second blue. Epot smooths out some of it. Tunic can help a little bit. But I think that just overall increasing the blue ratio might be a good idea, just by a small amount. And the inventory, it's basically exactly everything that we talked about. The only difference here was, instead of the 3rd copy of Evergreen, I ended up going for a Remembrance. And while we're here, for anyone who is asking, the Fate Foreseens are not best in slot. They are just what I have. I do not want to pay $300 for 3 copies of Shelter. So if you have Fate and you don't want to buy Shelter, don't stress about it. If you do have access to Shelter, you know, if I could have exactly the ratio I want, I would play 3 Shelters and 2 Sinks probably in this list. So do that information what you will. Everything else is exactly what you've seen before. 1 copy of Remembrance. This is for 2 things. Specifically, this is for New, specifically CYB New, and also for Florian. The main reason why is because if they're going to play Reaping Blade into you, there's a couple things we can do for the combo, right? Like, we can relatively stay close to the same life total as them. Our E-Pods and our H-Pods basically set up everything we need for the combo, except for the fact that we're close to the same life total as them. You could set up your combo and then play like a Pulsing Aether targeting yourself, since the 4 Arcane is any target, and then you can drop yourself lower than them, and then they can't do anything. So on your next turn, you're able just to have a full combo into them. The biggest thing here is you'll need to be like 9 life lower than them, right? Because you have to account for the 3 H-Pots you want to crack, and then the 3 Rampants you probably want to play. So I guess you can technically go to 8. This math might be correct. Double check me. I'm tired. I've been traveling all day for this ProQuest. Literally just got back. But because you're able to gain life when you're at parity with them. The easiest method, in my opinion, is setting up the H-Pot combo. But in the meantime, or depending on how the game state plays out, you just scour them a bunch of times. Just get 6 copies of Scour, right? Just make it so that, like, deterministically, they're just dead to your Scours plus your Remembrance. Now, things are going to change a lot in this matchup. People are going to play differently. We're going to have different adaptations, different tech. So don't like sweat it too much, but basically this was a card that I thought was very impactful for the Florian OTK matchup. But to go one step further, it was really good into New because you're able to get your 3 copies of Fellions back. And for people who are familiar with the New matchup, you kind of want to send a lot of 7s in that matchup, try to trade damage as much as you can. The longer you play the game out, the more grindy it gets, the higher likelihood you have to lose to some of her like end game stuff. Although you do want to set up H-pots and try to combo if you can. You can be comfortable with just doing an H-pot combo and Verdance pinks. I did that today and it was perfectly fine. So getting like the 3 copies back off the Remembrance is really huge, and then being able to also rebuy them with So tomorrow. Or for some reason, if they're not banished but they're disrupted, your evergreens, if you're able to rebuy those, if for some reason they end up in graveyard, also very important for the deck. And so that was the only split, where before I was running the 3 evergreens, but I think that this is a better anti-fatigue tool specifically because of Florian. So it just kind of covers the spread a little bit cleaner. And then we're playing the E-Pot, the Tunic. I think if I could go back in time, I maybe would have just swapped the Tunic and the E-Pot for the Earth Forms. Like, these cards didn't really service me very much today, and Earth Form would have been really good into Aurora. But that's all a hindsight thing. Summersfall still feels important for Aurora. I feel like it's actually like a really subtle but very effective piece of disruption, so I wouldn't cut it anytime soon, until she leaves at least. But that is what I played for the week. So if you wanted a point to touch in, see what lists are doing with the LL of Enigma, you're not going to see a whole lot here, but there are some things to consider as we go further into the season. But until next time, thank you for watching.